this universe is a loving place in a way that circling can help the transition into this place of trusting that actually the intentions are really good. Is actually because the practice helps to check my assumptions. Yeah. When someone is sharing and I feel I'm being judged, or sometimes I feel I'm being attacked or criticized, whatever it is, I can check that. Okay, that's an assumption that's based on the experiences I've had in the past, on how I got used to look at the world. But I don't know for sure that's what it is like, what that other person is really feeling towards me unless I check. So because there is this confidence in certain checking assumptions, and then when I hear back where that is coming from, I can be surprised. And then I'm like, wow, actually, no, people actually don't hate me. No, they don't. Like they just experience something that's going on for them. It has nothing to do with who I am, not a reflection on me. So it helps me to rewire my brain basically. Because each time I check and I see that, oh, wow, it's not how I perceived it, but the truth is actually so much nicer. And then, I start believing in this new because it's a visceral experience. It's not just my own imagination. Oh, I just want to feel that we're all love and light. No, I actually check with others.
The container is now open. Today we bring you an interview with circling facilitator and fellow seeker Mahaya Alina Sikorsky. She works at the Connection Institute, an awesome online resource for anyone wanting to get more circling in their lives and to fold that in with parts work. Mahaya's practice focuses on how circling teaches us how to live through love rather than fear, how we can move in deeper connection, and how building that deeper connection and building a deeper sense of presence is actually enough to change the world. She even connects this to the idea of New Earth consciousness, which is a paradigm shift that many spiritual thinkers are talking about these days. But don't worry, we'll explain all of that in due time. If you would like to make sure more conversations like this exist in perpetuity, spreading the gospel of circling far and wide to usher in New Earth consciousness with certainty, with absolute certainty, then you know the role that you can play. Go to patreon.com/thecontainer. Commit to making small monthly donations. This will guarantee we will reach New Earth consciousness in no more than 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And with that, we go into the interview, which we begin by asking Mahaya the eternal question, the question that in many ways the container was created to answer, which is, what is circling anyway?
For me, it's about presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot about presence. For me, it's the space of presence. That's where it starts. And as in contrast to my solo meditation, where I practice presence with myself, there are others around me. So that brings this extra layer with what I am becoming present here. It's not just with what's inside of me, but also this extra layer of how I'm impacted by having other humans around me. And then how I relate with that exploration from myself. How I am being with whatever that brings up in me to explore that. And how I'm coming out with what's happening in me into connection with others. And because there's this another human being, there is an opportunity for me to expand my own sense of what's possible. Because there are certain experiences that I touch into within myself of what's possible. And something's out of my awareness. And when I get a chance to explore what's that to be you, which is in the circling space, there is this space for exploration. It's all about exploration. Then it helps me to connect with the experiences maybe that I don't experience in my own body yet, the perspectives. the feelings, the flavors of nuances of what else is possible to experience. So to me, the circling space is just this playground for exploration, and we enrich each other. Each person that's here, we enrich the experience of what's possible. What else is possible?
I really love the emphasis on possibility as the next horizon. Like once we kind of wake up to the present moment. Yeah, that was the journey my imagination went on, hearing you like coming in out of the mist, waking up in the present moment, seeing the other there,
Mm.
and then turning to what's possible now in that kind of new awareness. That was a really wonderful journey to be taken on.
Yeah, and the exploration piece, something that really stuck with me in what you just said was to explore with another something that maybe I have not experienced yet in my body. And you use this word yet, and it was like, ah, that for some reason that just really hit me. Um, because it leaves the door open for it may it that may it's in the space, it's in the field, it's in the other that's right here. So in some ways it is in me, I don't experience it yet, and so there's like a way to explore and to experience through another in a circle that allows you to have uh a little more kind of movement. If you're able to help another person explore what's going on in them, but it's not quite in you yet, there's like more navigation space sometimes, especially if it's an intense sensation or an intense experience or emotion. um yeah, that really, yeah, really got me.
I wonder what your perspective is, Mahaya, on why that exploration is so easy in circling, or what is it about circling that facilitates that?
Mm. Yeah, I feel that the circling practice, because it's exploration, that's how it's defined. We are gathering together. There is no agenda. It's not a sharing circle. It's just exploring how it feels for me to be with you. That's what it is about. So there is a lot of sense of curiosity in that. I don't have an agenda to connect with you, but I have the curiosity of how you impact me and how it feels for you to be you. What's that like? Who are you? It's like, how are you processing things? How things land with you? What that brings up. But it's like, yeah, how do you experience things? And I realized that the more I experience circling, and there's just such an endless varieties of how people experience things that are so different from how I do experience them. And I feel that sense of curiosity where there's no agenda, where everything is welcomed. Everything is welcome. There's like no wrong way to experience things. That's kind of spaciousness allows that. This openness to different perspective, different ways of relating, processing.
You facilitate circles, correct? That's a component of your practice, and I'm noticing, just listening to you, there's something in the way that you're transmitting this that I notice I'm slowing down and I'm becoming more present, and I'm appreciating that. Probably going to a circle facilitated by Mahaya, there's like some amount of understanding the question, what is circling, comes from just being in your presence as you're dropping in. Other people are able to drop in to whatever that state is. And the more I'm in the practice, the more I think this is actually there's like a natural state that there's like a wavelength that we're born with that we're like dropping into or something. Whether that's true or not, it's like being in your presence. I'm feeling myself drop in there. And I'm wondering what kind of guidance you give people other than just, like I said, like just being dropped in. And you're pulling just right now, listening to you hearing you, I'm being pulled in. But is there any other guidance that you give people?
I like to reorient people to what is here. Yeah, I notice when people are new to this practice, we kind of are all used to being here and talk from this place. What I think about this and what the meaning I make out of this, and like all these like meanings that we are making out of things. Concepts, yeah, it's all this here. And for myself, the beauty of the practice of circling is because it invites us to come here to actually, what's the truth in my body? What is it that I'm actually feeling? Yeah, not where I am there, but here in my body. What am I sitting with? Maybe there is this a little bit vulnerability here right now. It's just like I'm feeling quite vulnerable, and there's this feeling of rawness being with you here. And that's to me where the fullness of the circling experience is when we can drop into that space of exploration. So the way I guide what I like to bring into the space is this orientation towards what's like here for you here right now. What actually is happening for you right now here? Yeah, coming back to the sensation, to the felt sense of being here. Being human, because to me that is human. It's kind of like here I can be anyone, anything. But here I'm really human, I'm just a very vulnerable human with my own limitations and strengths.
Mahaya says that circling is a playground of exploration, and I think that that's a really good pointer that leads us out of the prison that so many of our moments are trapped inside of. You'll even notice as the three of us kind of dip into circle-y consciousness that we kind of lose the thread of what we're doing, like asking questions, answering them. Instead, we really get interwoven into the present moment, and it takes us a while to sort of break the trance and get back to business. It's a funny moment to share. We arise out of that to talk about New Earth consciousness and the role that practices like circling can play in building that in people. So I know the first thing you're thinking is, what is New Earth consciousness? It is a concept popularized by the great Eckhart Tolle, among many others. It's about how a paradigm shift could be awaiting humanity, one where we start engaging with ourselves in the world from a place of love rather than a place of fear. So like, how do we rise into that level of consciousness? I mean, we can use teachers, say very powerful teachers like ayahuasca, right? And they can make our consciousness extremely light and 5-dimensional. But it's essential to have more grounded practices like circling that consistently fold that into our day-to-day lives. It's a way that we can integrate these lessons little by little, on and on through every day. And that's why for seekers like Mahaya and myself, it's found to be just as transformative, just as revolutionary, just as psychedelic as even our plant teachers.
Right now I feel your gaze. Jonathan, and I'm like, oh, it's time for me to ask a question.
Uh-huh.
And and I feel a little bit caught because I'm in this, I think the word to describe how I feel right now is kind of mesmerized or like slow or um kind of in a trance, and there's, yeah, thinking about like what is actually here, what is here with us, what is here right now with us.
Mhm.
And I notice my body the temperature in my body has gone up multiple degrees since we've been talking.
Mhm.
um I think want I have like this yearning. It's like a sense of yearning. It feels like I'm leaning in, wanting, it's like I'm wanting to pull something out of us and don't know how to do it. So I have this kind of, it almost feels like a frustration in my body, and that maybe that is leading to this sense of heat or something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually having this curiosity, this feeling of wanting to pull something out of us. I wonder, yeah, and you said like you don't know what it is. It's just like wanting to get something out, but
Yeah.
there's no clarity what it is.
Mm-mm.
Wanting something. Huh. Um, yeah, yeah. What comes to my mind is where we started in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
where we wanted to see how this circling practice can support, and why I see it as a modality that can support humanity in integrating this new paradigm.
Mhm.
And I wonder
Mm.
if that'd be a good way to continue here, or there is anything else that's in the space.
Mhm. Yeah, you mentioning that, I was like awoken from a dream. I was like, oh yeah, there's all that is still on the table for us to get to. And I'm appreciating the trance like state, entering into these circly spaces in the head. It's like
Yeah,
things get so like you're underwater in this really fantastic way.
it's interesting. This is almost like it kind of feels like an experience that hasn't happened a ton of times. I want to like kind of talk from a meta level of what my experience of the last half hour or so has
Mm.
been with us, and
Mm.
that we were asking you to tell us about circling, and then we sort of fell into a circling kind of, we were sort of circling. It kind of felt like we were falling into that, and now we're kind of popping back out. And yeah, I mean, I'm very much interested in talking about the new paradigm, and um in particular what yeah, whether you sort of became interested in this idea of new earth consciousness prior to learning circling, or if circling led you there, or maybe that's a good place to start, kind of from a, like a, from you and your experience, and then into that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So many things are happening to me as I listen to you. Yeah. And at the same time, yes, let me answer your question. Yeah, for myself, first, I did become aware of there's a different way of being that is possible than what I currently been knowing till now. And I became aware of that because at some point in my life, I was very, very sick and was super, super happy. It's kind of the life I kind of didn't even understand why I'm here. And I felt I needed to do lots of healing. So I worked intensely with ayahuasca, like intensely. for a year and a half. And I tapped into the possibility of being, which is like fantastic. Like, wow, we are so interconnected. Just like all these different experiences that you get when you go into that space. And at the same time, I was coming out the ceremonies and I'm going back to my life. And yes, I could bring that through my work with others as a therapist, as a space holder, the things I was tapping into. However, as a human being, when I was relating with others, nothing has changed. I had the same emotional wounds. I was getting triggered. I was creating stories, huge stories about myself, how I'm being excluded. Everyone is rejecting me. Everyone is hating me. Like, like that on that plane, nothing got transformed with this work. So I could see this huge gap between what I felt is possible and where I'm at in the way I am being in the world. Nothing was shifting in that realm. I still had my triggers. Still had the same wounds, and I was still reacting, falling into the same patterns within myself when I get triggered. And when I've discovered the practice of circling, because everything for me was connected to relational stuff, yeah, it was others that were triggering me so much, that I had the space finally to start unpacking it, to understand what's happening for me. Why it's so difficult to be with others? Why it's not easy. It's kind of like I know how to use my words. I know how to communicate. I don't need a course on communication to say, hi, how are you? There is something else that's missing. And circling gave me that. I actually, the first session in circling, I just could see how much, like the extent of my wounds, because I could not even stay without going into a trauma response. Like I was a circling session and just people being there on the screen. It was online. It was during pandemic that I've discovered this practice. Okay. So I was logging into the session, sitting on the screen, and there are maybe 5, 6 other people on that Zoom call. And they started organic circling. And it's organic. So it's kind of like I need to bring myself in, right? If anything is alive for me. However, I didn't know how to do that. They were saying things, and I started feeling intensely excluded because when I feel like I don't contribute, I start feeling invisible. And there's like, whoa, I don't belong. And actually, this is intense for me. It was so intense. It's the shame starts coming up. Whoa, I knew something is wrong with me. All of that story. And I went into this freeze mode while being on the screen. And I did not even think that I could just disconnect and take care of myself. I didn't even know that basic thing of taking care of myself. And what happened is that the electricity went down in the whole house and my Wi-Fi went down and connected. And I started crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, even this I cannot do. Even this, I thought there is a way for me to learn, and I cannot even handle this. I'm so traumatized. And I reached out to the manager of the platform and saying to her, hey, I got this membership, but I think it's not going to work for me because it's just too edgy for me. By the time she got back to me, it took a few days. And by that time, I already figured out, you know what, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find the sessions that have more structure, where there is a theme, so that I feel a bit more kind of like there's this context, to start taking baby steps. And it was a long journey for me to unpack the things, how they impact me when others show up in a certain way, and to witness that, to notice and be with that and see, this is my stuff. No one is excluding me. No one is doing that. And no one is mean to me. No one is ignoring me. This is just my wounds that come up, and to learn how to take care of myself so that I can start seeing the truth and not what I'm used to in my story.
Wow.
Mm. Yeah, that is, I love that it, the things that circling slowly eroded at one point were so strong, they were able to like it either synchronistically or magically or randomly have this power to like shut off the whole system. Just like, we're gonna shut down the power. We're like, we're not doing that. We're not going there. That to me is like a fairy tale example of how I felt for so much of my life, and I didn't even realize that was not how it had to be. I didn't
Yeah.
even realize it. I just thought, yeah, some like maybe this stuff is just hard or something.
Right. And then being confronted with, there's some way that that when you're in a circle, there's like this, the way that the pattern is isolated. It's like you can't run. It's like you can't, when it comes back again and again, it's just so, it's like so easy to see, this is not them, this is me.
Mhm.
This is me, there is no arguing that. and and then when you're out in the world and it happens, then you're like and it's much more difficult to tease out, where it really does seem like maybe this is the one time that it is them and not me. But the circling like isolates the variable, like it's
Right.
like, no, okay, I'm going into exclusion mode again, and
Hmm.
this is a whole different group of people now, and a
Yeah.
different group of people now, and it's like, what are the, is it that everyone on earth is going to exclude me, or do I have a problem feeling excluded? Like, is it
Hmm.
mine? um,
Yeah, I love too. It's not sitting and talking to someone about times you felt excluded.
right.
It's in the moment being like, here it is. It's actually here. There's
Yeah.
something so transformative about circling that just like no other work really gets at that well of like, here it is. Whatever, I mean, for some people it's feeling excluded, for some people it's feeling like, whatever, like not good enough or whatever. It's like, let's talk about it while it's actually here and awake and working and um wow. I mean, just wow.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you're saying. I really love this reflections that you guys giving me,
Mhm.
because that's what the circling is for that's the space to bring that out. It's kind of like any other context. Okay, maybe, there's another group work, we're exploring something. There's not really space for like my own insecurities to share them. Sometimes we're just wanting to go ahead with something that we work on project, right? There is no curiosity about, oh, what experience you're having here right now. And in circling, it's all about that. And that's so in the context, if I feel like I want to go there to share, like, hey, actually, that's how I feel right now. Yeah. And
Mm.
there's so much space for that. And that's what is others are curious about. That's what brings the aliveness into the space. That's when it really starts being so juicy and alive. When
Mm.
something like that starts coming in. It's wanted, it's welcomed so much.
Hmm. So yeah, that I feel like that gives me a really good understanding of how it started to shape and transform your life. And then there is this step beyond where, okay, what if, more people circled and then more people circled, and that would have this natural consequence that it would change the world slowly but surely. um and I know you've done a lot of thinking on how it circling points to or interacts with or presages new earth consciousness. And um yeah, maybe define new earth consciousness and then talk about how you see these things
Mm.
circling and new earth consciousness interacting.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel this new earth consciousness or new paradigm of being is the biggest contrast with the old paradigm, is where we are relating to each other from the place of love rather than from the place of fear. Just going through life from the place of, from the assumption where this universe is a loving place. and this feeling of interconnectedness. It's kind of like my good is your good. As in the old paradigm, I feel it's like more for myself. There's this competition, there's separation. And in a way that circling can help the transition into this place of trusting that actually the intentions are really good, is actually because the practice helps to check my assumptions. Yeah, when someone is sharing and I feel I'm being judged, or sometimes I feel I'm being attacked or criticized, whatever it is, I can check that. Okay, that's an assumption that's based on the experiences I've had in the past, and how I got used to look at the world. But I don't know for sure if that's what it is like, what that other person is really feeling towards me, unless I check. So because there is this confidence in certain checking assumptions, and then when I hear back where they is coming from, I can be surprised, and then I'm like, wow, actually no, people actually don't hate me. No, they don't. Like they just experience something that's going on for them. It has nothing to do with who I am, not a reflection of me. So it helps me to rewire my brain basically, because each time I check and I see that, oh wow, it's not how I perceived it, but the truth is actually so much nicer. And then, I start believing in this new, because it's a visceral experience. It's not just my own imagination. Oh, I just want to feel that we're all love and light. No, I actually check with others. So, the reality. And that's just strengthens like oh, okay. So actually my perception was messed up. And then I start trusting that. And then I start leaving from that place. I trust that I can come to the person and look into their eyes. I stop being afraid to look into their eyes and stay open and trust that whatever will happen will have something good, that people just want to connect really. And they want to, yeah, they want to welcome you into their experience. As before that, for example, with my story, I felt that, yeah, there was a story that who I am is not good enough. And I better keep small and don't do inappropriate things and don't be bold in myself. And that's not welcomed. And, as I get comfortable in being myself because of the practice and start being more bold and more myself or more free and check with others how this lands. Is it too much? And I see that they get inspired. Then it inspires me. And then it inspires them even more. And then we become even more ourselves. And that's a new paradigm for me. But everyone trusts that they can be themselves, and it actually contributes to the well-being of everyone else. This is a new paradigm. This is like the world I want to live in, where everyone feels that way. And I feel circling supports people and feel like, yeah, it's okay to be you. Who you are is amazing. You can trust what you're feeling. It's welcomed.
I'm curious, Mahaya, how I don't know why this is the question I have. How long do you think how long does it take, or did it take you to train your brain and rewire your brain in that way? I'm imagining, like, I know in my experience that the first year of circling, it was hundreds of hours that we ended up in a space with other people, whether it was just Jonathan and I or with other groups. And and then consistently, like, keeping up with it is another piece of it as well, keeping up with the practice. So yeah, I'm curious what your kind of lived experience has been and continues to be, because you're, in my mind, like, you're further down the path than where I am. And so I just want to hear from a person who's been practicing a little bit longer than I have, like, what that's like what is it, as the gifts continue to kind of show themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I know for myself, I started when it was pandemic. So I had all that space and time to every day go into these online sessions, sometimes one, even two times, even three times a day.
Mm.
And maybe it was going for 6, 7 months. So it's quite a lot. I really immersed myself into this practice. And when things started opening up, I came out into the world. I felt, oh, now I want to explore that with real people who don't know the practice. And from then, it was 4 years of really living, circling in the world. It's kind of like using everything I've learned to be always curious, especially when I get triggered, especially when things become challenging, how I can stay curious rather than go into a story. And at the end, I felt to really integrate that, I needed to give myself an experience of being in a community where it's a small community of, quite intimate community, not too big. It was maybe 8, 10 of us, where I can be in a community and live what I believe in, which is a circling way of relating and from sharing and vulnerability and see how that plays out in my dynamics with others. So, so yeah, it was about 6, 8 months of just like in the circling space, really taking that in and then practicing. And today I can say that even when I'm very, very triggered, so triggered, there is this capacity to catch myself
Mm-hmm.
and to like, can I be curious rather than wanting the outcome? Hey, I just want us to get through that. Yeah. Like when there's a conflict, it's just so uncomfortable. Okay. I'm going to just let it go. Just do whatever you want to do. Yeah. Like that. It's easy. Or the other way around is just like, oh, I don't want to do anything with you again. I don't want to see you bring up too much pain for me. Instead of that, to get curious, wow, how can we work through this? I don't know what's going to be on the other end, but I'm curious what's going on for you. And that's what's going on for me, and owning my experience, and just see the capacities there, even in like really strong, when my strong ones get activated. And that's just really great to see.
Mm. You mentioned living in a community that uses this sort of communication and framework for relating. I'm curious what the differences are, like living in a field like that all of the time, how that has affected you.
The community they didn't even know what authentic relating is.
Mm.
However, that community was community that it was in Guatemala. So wasn't this just like fast pace, There were people who are there to really be, to enjoy being. They had space to connect with you. It wasn't about just like, oh, I have no space. I have to work on my stuff, keep going, constant to-do lists. There was spaciousness for connection, and that's what made difference. And it was me coming into the connection from the place of presence that allowed others to drop there as well with me, and started, facilitating those spaces where we go into those explorations. And also when challenges arise, because in community, when you live in community, there are different needs, different desires, different boundaries, to practice how I navigate through that, different triggers. So it wasn't specifically community for circling authentic relating. It was community where there's more spaciousness. People are open for connection more than in other settings.
I really like this understanding of circling as not just a personal practice that changes the way we relate to each other and even ourselves, but one that can almost reprogram how we relate to the field, to society as a whole. And as more and more members of society change the way they relate to society, it can't help but fundamentally alter that greater field. Yes, this can happen on small scales first, like in intentional communities. But it can, of course, also keep growing until it reaches the global stage and beyond. But how does it do this? How does it make the leap from yoga studios and Burning Man events and library rooms to how humanity relates with existence itself? To some degree, this has to happen just by transmission. So, like, if we are in deep presence, we are already affecting others in the space. We're already bringing the field more and more into presence, more and more into that holy act of weaving shared reality. So then that, yeah, I noticed like another curiosity that comes up for me there is like how do we build into our shared spaces more and more circling, or like, or is it just a matter of people circling and bringing that into their lives? Yeah, I get there's like a part of me that wants there to be some kind of political program, like they'll be circling in the town square, and there's like some
Right.
I don't know, like drive for it, but or is it like, do you see circling as changing the paradigm simply like slowly person by person?
Mm. Yeah, so what you're saying is that the possibilities are either just the way we are doing so far, where it's, circling community, and that's what we do, or what's the other option? Like
Mm.
to create, kind of like to incorporate this practice more into other events that are happening there. And
Yeah, I've been working a lot recently with this idea of institutions, and I've been seeing them, I think, with more sympathy than I have in previous versions of myself. And I guess like when I hear of hearing about how circling can leap us into this new way of being, and how like just that, imagining a world transformed by that being the ground, that being the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's
yeah,
a part of me that wonders like is there a way to hold that in some sort of structure, like an institution that is able to hold that, and um what is it, support it, continue it, protect it, grow it. um yeah, and I noticed that's like a frame I'm bringing to the conversation. Yeah, and I appreciate that might not be where you're coming from, but it's like a, yeah, really really a big part of how I'm seeing it.
yeah. You know what comes up for me when I hear you saying that? For myself, I came to that place where I realized if I do my work, then whoever I get in touch with, I'm able somehow to transmit that, because I'm living that
Mm.
in myself. And I feel that any person who is passionate about circling and believing in circling, if that person takes it close to the heart and show up in wherever they show up in the world, everywhere, their relationships, their workplaces, the sellers at the store when they go buy their groceries, uh, in any interaction, if they keep showing up in that way, that shifts. Because I know for myself for sure, when I'm aligned within myself, and to me, it's just presence, connection with myself, and being here in the moment with that other person, really present with them. It shifts. People drop there unless they're really distracted. Yeah, not everyone, of course. Yeah, if they're under lots of pressure,
Mhm.
it's hard for them even to see who is in front of them. They're just leaving their program. They don't even see. They don't have the capacity. But those who are in that place where they can see, wall. It's just like right away they're feeling something and they want that and they're curious and they want to know more and they want to get to know you. And that's, I feel it's like this like kind of like grassroots more. It's the impact that kind of sits everywhere. And I feel that already there are so many of us who are in these practices. And, you know, if each one of us takes it, like committed and takes it wherever we are. And then if others curious talk about it, I say like, hey, that's where you can learn to be that way too. You know, that's how it spreads. Because yeah, like I'm so much happier. Like truly, like I'm so much happier. I before circling, even with all the ayahuasca and all this stuff, I still was so miserable. I mean, that world is amazing, but like my life sucks. I'm not happy. I'm really not happy. And now I'm just like, actually, this is very interesting to be human. You know, it's so interesting to be human. So it's definitely, to me, it's like a path to happiness, you know, in some way as well, to more fulfillment, more meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate well, I also imagining and having the experience of taking this way of being out into the world and imagining, like I'm thinking of a recent, like family get-togethers or um going to a get together that with a lot of people who don't know circling. um there's these like one-off occasions that I'm thinking of where, it's like you can see that people see that you're different, but there's like there's power in the consistency of returning and consistently being in this space of presence and genuine empathetic relating with the other, that over time would, I can see would begin to have these shifts, or will begin to have these shifts, and has begun to have these shifts in, I mean, even in my own job, I think of as well. And in institutions as well, like being the person who's showing up and being in presence and being this way, like, there's kind of like the people I work with think I'm kind of weird, but they start to talk different. I hear them saying like, I have a story, instead of just saying so and so's doing this. They say, I have a story, it's this. I mean, there are these subtle influences
Wow.
that slowly kind of help to shift. And they've never learned circling.
You know what that connects me to? At the beginning of this discussion, Mahaya, when you were describing circling, and you're just kind of describing the space that circling holds for people, and something about your presence and how you transmitted that, some of which I have a story was developed by circling itself, really made it pretty effortless for me to drop in and to be present. And I that is like a microcosm of like a something that circlers all kind of carry with them, is that we have this opportunity to draw people into more presence, just like you did at the top of the show, like not by telling people, hey, drop in,
Right. Slow down.
right, yeah,
Get out of your head.
yeah, but just by dropping in and slowing down and modeling, yeah. There's an interesting way to, you were talking about how the paradigms are like, maybe we could frame it as fear or love, and there's a way that love is a modeling teaching style, And fear is maybe teaches you to do things in more through like punishment and urgency
Mm.
for whatever that's worth.
I think they're both taught. I
Yeah.
think we both we teach both.
Hmm.
But yeah, the urgency and blah versus the slowness and the yeah and
Hmm.
the eye contact.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate how you've noticed that and just emphasizing this about this a component of circling, which is slowness. Things slow down in
Mm.
circling. And yeah, it's more learning through love than through fear. Because that whole one of the principles of circling where everything is welcomed, that's the principle of love. Because if I, even within myself, if I push something away, yeah, some separation is there, some fear, some resistance. Oh no, this is not okay. So it's, yeah, the whole like foundation of circling. It's everything is welcomed.
Mm.
Mm.
Any of your human experience is welcomed here, and that helps people to like, wow, okay, actually, I guess I'm okay, even if those thoughts crossing my mind, even if that's how I feel, actually, maybe it's all okay. So it's like this, like, yeah, yeah, it is okay. Like it's love, it's just, yeah, that's where everything belongs. Mhm.
There's a there's an important interpretation you included in that with welcome everything that I think just bears repeating, that welcome everything isn't about trying to welcome stuff even when you feel resistance. It's welcoming the resistance itself. Or like the if bad quote unquote feelings arise from something that happens in the circle, welcome everything isn't like pretend to be super cool guy who doesn't feel bad feelings. That's not welcoming everything. Welcoming everything is this crazy jujitsu move that until you see it done, I don't know, it seems impossible, but you actually welcome the negative feelings. That's so the mystery in that and the power in that is like, yeah, what good medicine. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Because for myself, I know that when I experience challenging states within myself, there's sometimes thoughts like either that something is wrong with me, something needs to be fixed, or yeah, like that whole train of thought that starts. And knowing that actually, like according to the principles of circling, nothing is ever wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like no matter how crazy that is, it's all part of being human. And that creates that space. Oh, actually, I can notice how I am judging this experience. So that's kind of like liberating, right? Oh, I have a thought about that. This is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
This needs to be fixed. I start noticing there's a space all of a sudden between like me being this and oh, it's just a story that I'm creating out of this experience. Just
Yeah.
like Sarah, you say it, but I loved like that at work, people would start using this wording, saying like, "Oh, I have a story." I'm like, "Wow, good for you, Sarah, for letting them take that in." Because that, to me, if someone can say that, that's the path of liberation. This path of liberation that people say, where you start being more in a witnessing consciousness rather than being caught in what's happening, the
Mm-hmm.
identity. When you start naming, "Oh, I have a story." Here is a space. There's a space.
Mm.
So good
Yes.
for you.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think at first it was kind of joking, like they were kind of joking, like, "Oh, I'm gonna say it the way she says it," but then they started to go, "Oh, actually, wait, this is useful." Especially when we're going through a lot of, intensity at in different projects and stuff.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I love the idea of the role model and modeling, and remember, it's amazing to me as we're talking. Earlier today, I was having some low valence mood, just feeling like really low and forgetting, like it's like having amnesia, forgetting that oh yeah, welcome everything.
Mm.
That's also kind of why I asked you how long, like how long exactly was it until your brain was totally rewired? Because I'll go through these, days where it's like I've forgotten my tools. And then they'll come back and I'm like, oh, it was here all along.
Mm.
But I didn't have the same access to them. And it feels like and I want to think of a way to say this without sounding, it's like feeling like a sense of feeling like half healed, like I'm aware of the tools, and I can use them really well a lot of times, but then other times I don't have access to them still. And yeah, that makes me wonder if that's a developmental thing, or if that's, the human experience, or yeah, like what others go through. um and so hearing you, as someone, like I said, a little further down the path, like reporting this level of happiness that's more consistent, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna keep circling.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah, what you're saying, I can relate to that. I also have my amnesias.
Yeah.
I actually had one yesterday. However, the difference I see is that it becomes shorter when I get lost.
Hmm.
It's like I'm right in it, I'm right in my story. And now, because I've been experiencing that story many, many times, I can point onto that. And I'm just like, oh, there is this. I recognize those thoughts. I recognize this feeling of being a victim, that someone is unfair with me. I recognize all this. I've been there. And still, I cannot take it off me. Like, it's intense. And I'm just like, oh, I need a therapist. I don't think I healed enough yet. Like, who is my therapist? Suddenly my therapist is like, and like I go through that, I have that amnesia, but now it's shorter. So this is
Mhm.
nice. Before that I maybe would get stuck for a month, or like,
Yeah.
and then it became for a week, and then it became for a few days, and now maybe like for half a day, and that's already amazing that we can come back, like all the counts that I can come back and come back to, because I'm the only one who is like, giving that power away, right? So I can come back to remembering, like, whoa, it's all my own perspective.
Mm.
How dare I say that? No one can do that. Tell me what perspective I can take.
Mhm. I know I keep having this question come up and I don't know. Yeah, I'm just gonna make contact. I'm gonna just let it speak. Um, I'm curious about what your edges are right now that you are working on. Like,
Mm,
where are you pushing yourself?
yeah. So right now I'm stepping into this place where I want to create more impact with what I do. And it's the whole new challenge of starting to understand the business side of it, hiring a business coach, and getting a bit out more online. And it's kind of like, how people say, like, if this growth is not straight, but it's like not linear, it's like a spiral. So I'm encountering the same issues of feeling that someone is, not respecting me, or, yeah, not honoring, or being unfair with me, and being taken advantage. It comes now in this. And again, it's that same old stuff that starts bringing up for me. where I feel like, whoa, I start feeling overwhelmed. I think it's too much. No, I can't do it. And I want to give. Let me just go back to what I always did in my life. I don't want any new projects. It's overwhelming. And I go into that space. And that's challenging for me when I go into that space to remember to come back to the new paradigm feeling, which for me is practicing trust. It's like, hey, okay, there is something that's really real here. I know that I can offer. I know for sure because I get that feedback from others. I had lots of feedback on that. So I know there is something real and that's needed. And I make the difference when I do come out. And if something bigger than myself wants me to do this work, no matter what shows up in my life, no matter how challenging it is, if I just keep doing my steps that are aligned with that vision, it's going to happen. And facing all the shit that comes up in me. Yeah, like my own stuff, my own. The life just helps me to clear that out even more, just to see that perspective. So this is, to me, this is the new paradigm perspective, like trust that you're needed here because each one of us is needed. Each one of us carrying a certain medicine. And what is challenging is when the challenge comes up, not to buy into a story that like, oh, maybe no, I shouldn't be going there. Oh, maybe I still need to heal. Oh, maybe I still need to, you know, take the time, not the right time. No, this stuff comes up because there is something I can learn from it to be even stronger in what I came here to do. Kind of shifting that perspective. So that's my challenge right now for myself to come back to trust, trusting that something bigger is working here. It's not me.
I loved when you said about the growth is not linear and that there's the spiral. And so these same things are coming up, but now you're at a different level of consciousness to meet them. I was just reading about that earlier today, actually. Um, and I love the perspective of like, especially it's interesting you shared that right after I shared what I shared because I was able to get so much from what you said of um thinking about these things that come up for me and that I am really looking at them from a different perspective now, like a different rung of the spiral. They are the same things, but I'm not the same as when they were sort of just running my life before. It's like the fact that I can even make object of it is a huge difference. And that's also what I hear you saying, that especially with moving into this area of making more impact in your life um and in your business and turning towards that just resonates a lot for me and for our path right now too. Yeah.
I'm noticing it's a spiral, and then it's also like we have these different fields in our life. Our lives are fragmented into these little areas, and we will end up like, oh, this is that thing that comes up. I've only seen this in a romantic context, but now it's coming up in business. Like, it's the same shit, but it's in this through the different prism of like this field. It's pentacles over here when it used to be cups, and then sometimes it's wands or swords. There's a way that, yeah, it's both a spiral and sort of, I don't know what you would call that. There's some fancy word for that, like hologram or something. But yeah.
A Taurus. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, no matter what we do, it's going to be there for us to face whatever we need to face. I feel like, yeah, it's just like I know for myself, till I learned to be without story. That's what I realized. It's just like, can I just feel it and not to fall into the story anymore? That's the learning. Because the suffering is the story, or the stuckness is the story. And if I come back to just feeling without believing the story that invoked that feeling. Yeah. Feel that's where what's called emotional freedom is. It's just like, yeah, it's okay to feel. Yeah.
That phrase really impacted me. The stuckness is the story.
Mm.
Hmm. I'm curious about if there are ways that listeners or viewers could, um, like, how do they get more Mahaya in their life?
Well, I do see people one-on-one. I do that work. They can always reach out, and I do help people with feeling their feelings and getting clarity and connecting with themselves deeper and trusting themselves more.
Mm.
Yeah, really embracing what they came here to do and trusting that. There is definitely that. And also, I hold a lot of group containers. And right now, I'm collaborating with the Connection Institute. And that's the institute that has a platform specifically dedicated to the practice of circling and parts work as well. So people just get a membership and they can attend circling sessions, parts work, some presencing sessions, and I facilitate on that platform regularly. There is also, I think, 1 week free trial on that platform, as well as I hold containers immersions there of 6 weeks where we can go deeper into the practice of circling or into the practice of embodiment of our parts, because I feel that's the work that I'm so passionate about, where there are some parts that we feel not welcomed, and maybe they are not. Like the part that wants to be mean to everyone, it's not a good idea. But in that container, we get to explore it and give voice to that, like embodying and role playing and becoming more alive, kind of more integrating those aspects into ourselves, kind of more whole in that way. So those kind of immersions I offer there. Um, yeah, and there's a beauty in doing it in a container of the same people. Yeah, small group, because that's when the real stuff starts coming out.
Yeah.
And when the real stuff starts coming out and held in a good way, in a safety and held in the right way, then it has the potential to heal. Because for me, all the interest in all of this is about healing, transforming. Sometimes when the stuff comes up and it's not held in a good way, it can be re-traumatizing, right? So when you are in the container where that stuff, you feel safe enough and you start feeling all of that and you're being held in a different way than you normally do when that comes up, that's when shift happens, the real shift. The real shift.
The container is now closed. Mahaya reminds us of the transformational power of circling and how that transformation doesn't stop in your life, but it moves out into the world. She reminds us that the single best way to spread these practices is by allowing them to deeply enter into your own being. It's not by proselytizing the practice to others, except obviously by podcast, but simply through osmosis. There's a lot of hope in the message that she shares, and that's why we're so grateful that she chose to come on the container and share that with us and with you, our audience. So make sure to take her up on the extraordinary opportunity to circle with her at theconnectioninstitute.net. One of her fellow facilitators there is actually Melody Indigo Markel, who came on the pod in episode 39 and 40 to share with us her insights on integral circling. link to those episodes in the show notes. With that, we have a nice way of closing. Keep it namaste.